woke. Take off your shades, it helps see through the smoke. Cause the wicked hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog. What's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Speeding the facts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy, and I'm going to start the show today with a disclaimer that although neither of Kerri or I have been drinking, we are both in a very silly mood. It is going to be probably a little shorter than most shows because we have a lot of things to do, you know, getting ready for the Christmas season, and people get like that in their last day of work before the holidays. They don't want to do anything, want to leave at lunch, you know, that kind of thing. So we're no different than everybody else. So anyways, I guess we might as well just get right to it. Kerri Barber, I hear that it is 15 degrees in New Mexico, that it is snowing, and people are caroling in the streets without masks. Is that true?
None of that is true. And wait a second, I want to correct the record here. So good morning to everybody. And while some of us will be taking our holiday vacation, others will be working. So I have a screen test for new shows coming on. I've got to do immediately after this show. So we're bringing on some new on-air talent with some awesome perspectives and slightly different take on the world at large. So yeah, I'll be working. Andy will be on vacation. So that's how things work around here. I love how he glossed over that, but
Kerri, my life is a vacation.
Right. Well, I didn't realize that Christmas was this week, so I am completely behind on everything because I need one of those retiree the clocks that just have the day of the week on it.
Who knew it was in December this year?
Right. So all of my holiday gifts I was tracking them. I went through the post office because I support the post office, but obviously they have been hamstrung by everything that happened in the election. That's still going on. My packages are still sitting in the Albuquerque post office.
Albuquerque Purgatory.
Later, so. Yeah, pretty much. So to everybody on my gift list, and there's only 3 of you. Sorry. So yeah, that's what's going on. Hey, good morning, Mike. Thanks for joining us. I know Mike is on vacation, so for him to be up this early, good on you. This is wonderful. Thank you.
So I'm thinking that we get past this pandemic somehow, right? With the vaccine, if we can, you know, shackle people to in their homes, we might possibly get through this next year. Then once it's a distant memory, then I'm thinking that this is when the real COVID memes are going to come out, right? Because it won't be affecting anybody anymore. So I'm really looking forward to, you know, the Christmas 2021, I'm giving COVID for Christmas, you know, stuff like that. It's going to be a free for all. It's going to be great.
Yeah, not affecting people. I think that's a wonderful dream, and I totally support that. I think we're going to be living with this for a couple of years. So, which makes the headlines that came out yesterday and last night and everything just so magical. So I am full on snark today because this is just absolute utter bullshit, and I think I would start cussing or crying. So I'm going to go with snark this morning. And this morning I was treated to a friend of mine.
No snark.
Yes.
No snark.
Snark alert.
Snark.
Right. So this morning, one of the first things that pop up on my feed, and Andy, you and I before the show were talking about algorithms. So like, this is somebody I rarely talk to, and it came up first. So I'm like, okay, you're forwarding this. And this particular person posted an article about AOC and how anyone who is against her gaslighting right now is a political novice, and we're ruining the left. Right. So I'm like, oh, of course that comes up first. So my response, and I've said this before, and I want to say it again. I'm going to say it a little slower so that everybody gets it. Okay. So what you're saying is that we might hurt a civic person's feelings, a representative, a civil servant. We might hurt their feelings. And that is worse than 300,000 families who now have to pay for funeral expenses and medical bills from the care of that person who lost their battle with COVID. And then when we look at all of those people who recovered, which is way more than 300,000, those people who were hospitalized, they have at least 18,000, anywhere from 18,000 to $1 million in medical bills. They need to be still and be quiet and not complain. And then anyone who did go seek help and was sent home, they also have medical bills. So all of those people, we're up to a couple million now and trillions in debt. They need to sit down and be still because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings who was sent to Congress for the sole purpose of forcing this issue. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
That's an interesting idea.
I'm not going to be kind about it. Right. I'm not going to be kind to people who are telling me to be quiet because I am trying to fight for my neighbors. No, you don't get to say that because you're not coming out of your pocket with money for those people and their bills. So all they have is, a little bit of a voice. And if it hurts her feelings, if it hurts the rest of the squad, if it hurts everyone else, this is what they were sent to do. They are representatives. They're not celebrities. They're not idols. They're just workers. That's their job. So.
And you don't work for
them.
They work for you.
That's correct. And that's where it's just, we've really gotten it backwards. If you think I'm wrong, if you absolutely think I'm wrong, we're alive, obviously. So go ahead and throw it in the chat and let's talk about it. If you think that I have the wrong perception, if you think that my advocacy on behalf of those who are sick and dying is somehow misguided, I want to hear about it. And I want to hear about it from you, your take on it. And if I'm going to warn you right now, if you say that we will lose a speakership and it'll go over to the Republican Party, that's not how it works. And it's publicly available information on how a speaker is chosen for the majority party. And it's a caucus type of situation. So let's say Nancy Pelosi doesn't secure the vote, right? She doesn't get the minimum amount. Then what happens is it goes back and it opens up for anybody to run, anybody in the majority party. I'm sure you can get a few Republicans who go, I'll do it. No, they have to get votes from the majority party to be Speaker of the House. So if it's not Pelosi, it could be anyone in the Democratic Party. And they also have to get the votes. And it keeps going and going and going until somebody reaches that threshold. So this whole idea that it's going to be some Republican who gets the vote, no, it's not going to happen. And then at this point, let me just play devil's advocate here. Let's say it is a Republican who gets Speaker. How would that be any different than what Nancy Pelosi brings to the floor now?
Well, and I'm sitting here listening to the arguments, right, about what we're saying is everybody's saying that you have to choose Pelosi because she's the farthest left. How is Nancy Pelosi the farthest left? And anything? Isn't
Who
she
said
just
she was the farthest left?
That's one of the arguments that the
No.
moderates are saying. You have to choose Pelosi because the alternative is someone that's more conservative. Is Nancy Pelosi not conservative? I don't get it. I don't, it doesn't make any sense to me. Who cares if Pelosi is the House leader or not? Right? We've all kind of,
Pelosi cares.
Well, obviously, and the people that are still with her, with Hillary, obviously care, right? Because they don't give a shit about anybody else. But at this point, because you still have the power in the centrists, right? In the neoliberal, who cares that it's Nancy or anybody else just because Nancy is the most senior and feels the most entitled to that job? Like when you were talking about with the DNC, with the well, I've put in my time, I deserve to be a delegate or whatever it was, or the head, or whatever you were talking about.
Yeah.
What does it matter if it's her? Like, I just don't get that.
Because America. that's really the answer.
Good, because
right?
I was afraid you were going to say Venezuela or something like that.
No, it's true story. We have a very strong sense of entitlement, and honestly, that is a marketing ploy. That is propaganda. That I'm entitled to it. No, you're not entitled to anything. You're never entitled to anything. And get your bootstraps, lady. So yeah, that's how I feel on the Medicare for All vote. And we've been waiting for, how old is Medicare? I want to say it's 65 years. Yeah, so the original plan with Medicare was we were going to start with the older generation, 65 and up, and then gradually roll it out by age brackets. And that is how it was sold to the American public. Well, that never happened. And we've been waiting all of this time. So for those who are saying, well, we need to wait. Yeah, no, my grandparents are dead and they were waiting. So if not now, when? And I think it is wholly unconscionable when we are seeing the refrigerator trucks roll into ICUs because the morgue is full. To still have this conversation and have somebody with a straight face try to argue against universal health care for our population, it makes no sense. We are losing money in our existing system. We have done a redistribution of wealth and pushed all the costs downward to those of us who can least afford it. And we're still having a straight face conversation about this? No. And there was a meme I saw this morning that pretty much encapsulates it, because the rest of the world looks at us like, why are you putting up with this? And what she said was, it's on our Facebook page now, but she said, I get that the rest of the world is looking at us like, why are you not in the streets? And she's like, I can tell you from a poor person's perspective, there are people out here who have no trouble shooting us down like animals. That happens here. And it's not going to happen in France or the UK or anywhere else. This is why we're not in the streets. But if all we have left is applying gentle pressure, like nobody put a guillotine in front of her office, which would be hilarious. But nobody did that. All we said was, please do your job. Please use your power and influence to do your job. And we're being told no. That's insane. That is insane. So let's move forward in this conversation and put it in context with things that happened yesterday and overnight, because I think it's very telling in line of this conversation, right? So first, I want to go to the difference between voter fraud and election fraud. So for my Tea Party folks, yes, there is election fraud. These are the tools and levers in politics that allow big parties on the ground to manipulate the election. Yes, it happens. We know it happens. We have a court case with the DNC where they are gleefully championing all of the things they do and say that they have a right to do it. Republicans do it too. So these are all the dirty tricks and tactics, as well as legal framework in the election process that allow them to do this stuff. We saw it with, you know, getting the Green Party off the ballot in Wisconsin, all of this stuff. Yes, that falls under the category of election fraud. Some of it is legally sanctioned, some of it is not. Voter fraud is something different, and the two are not the same. Voter fraud is where an individual commits an illegal act in the course of voting, and that is extraordinarily rare. So it used to be, and it's still touted today, that dead people vote in Chicago, and that was the case historically, but things were put in place to make sure that doesn't happen. So when people are shouting about voter fraud, that illegal people are voting, it is so statistically rare as to not affect the outcome of the election. So what came out yesterday was a Pennsylvania man. I want to make sure I get his name right because he sounds like a comic book character. Bruce Bartman, such a great name. Bruce Bartman, 70 years old. He was charged with 2 counts of perjury and 1 count of unlawful voting when he allegedly registered his deceased mother and someone else online, and they all voted for Trump. So that is a clear case of voter fraud. And as we can see, this guy was caught. So when it's voter fraud and it's an individual, guarantee you're gonna get caught. And we saw this in 2016 with a bunch of people saying, well, I just wanted to test the system. No, girl, you're gonna get caught because you're an individual. Absolutely, they will catch you. There are checks and balances in place. Election fraud, completely different. We're totally cool with that. But you as an individual,
I love
no,
it. It's like going, why did you rob the bank? Well, it's my bank, and I just wanted to test to see how safe my money was.
And that's the exact same logic. So here's the irony. This particular gentleman, Bruce Bartman, if convicted, if he is found guilty, innocent until proven guilty, that's due process. Can't talk with my hands. The irony is that if he goes to jail, he will have medical coverage and room and board, and he'll be taken care of. So I guess it's a good thing. He's up on charges that could get him 19 years. So if you're 70, that's a life sentence. So
plus, if you go to
Bartman,
jail and you're a Trump supporter, there's a better chance that you're going to get to run into him.
Not just run into him, but yeah, you may get up on that pardon row.
You might be able to make him your bitch.
Well, yeah, Bruce looked pretty stocky, so he's 70. He's a lot younger than Trump. Yeah, smack him around a little bit. But yeah, so that was poor Mr. Bartman found out real quick that, oh yeah, voter fraud gets caught up real quick. So then the other big news story that came out was Trump is now threatening to not sign this bullshit bill that went through. Oh, hey, Dave. Good morning. Welcome for joining us. Okay, wait a second. What's going on in the chat here? All right. Mike says we have to deal with Nancy because at least she puts a pillow between the boot on our necks. Okay, that's hilarious. She's kinder and gentler about the boot on her necks. I love it. That's great. So
she puts she puts a Kemba cloth down.
right, and it's scented. It's lavender scented. We're so great. Okay, so okay, I haven't read all of the bill, and I try to read the text of the bill. When it becomes available, I will say Congress.gov, you're doing a shit job at making these things available to the public. You used to be so good. So good. Within 24 to 48 hours, that text was there. We could read it. Now you guys are just like a week, 2 weeks, a month, never. So I tried to read the bill that was released by the media, not by Congress.gov. And it's crazy because there's so much pork in there. So you remember we were talking about a second stimulus in June and July. They kept saying, yeah, we'll work on it. So here's apparently what happens when you leave a bill unattended in Congress. A bunch of congressmen sneak up in the middle of the night and add pork to it. Just bullshit. So a one pager turns into 5,000 pages, and you have stuff like, for the arts and for other countries. Like Pakistan got, I forget how many million, but it was for a gender program for women in school, which is awesome. But this is not what we're talking about. And I saw that there were a couple of Republican senators who were trying to take a victory lap because one of their pork projects had actually gotten signed and gotten through. And this was the one for prosecuting online piracy. And people quickly called him out like, what does this have to do with COVID? What is it? So,
as far as I knew, pirates get COVID too, don't they?
Wrong kind of piracy. We're talking about illegal streaming. Right. And
me lungs are on fire.
That was a good one. I'm impressed. So with that particular bill, that one caught my attention because I'm like, okay, they always say, well, it wouldn't affect like us, the stuff we do here on our 3-second soundbite or sharing news or whatever. I'm like, I'm not so sure because y'all shady like that. And you have done everything you possibly could to suppress independent media in favor of propaganda machines. So that language I really want to see, because if this bill goes through, what does that mean for everybody? Right? We know what they say the spirit and the intent is. What actually happens, right? So yeah, I'm looking at that one. But so if you didn't see Trump's speech, it's only 4 minutes long. And if you ignore the first 2.5 seconds and the last 3 seconds, everything in between, I made my husband listen to it last night. We both went, he's right. Absolutely, he's right. We totally agree with Trump, and now we feel dirty. But when he called out this...
I have to have a 3-hour shower.
Right. But when he called out all of these pork projects that were in this bill, so all we saw leading up to it was the total dollar amount. Right. And they didn't really talk about it. They said, here's what the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, they gave us the top number and said that money's going to the states. So in my head, I was like, okay, well, all right. So it's maybe not direct payments to people, but at least the states would get money and we could allocate what we need here on the ground. Okay, maybe that'll work. None of that is true. All of that money is going overseas or to the Kennedy Center. And
I'm not seeing any of that.
No. So
well, isn't
I
it
gotta
funny?
give it to Trump on that one.
Isn't it funny that this number keeps coming up over and over, right? 900 billion. And why is that? And we recently talked about this on our Macro and Cheese podcast, which I'm going to talk about a bit more later, but just because I want to, because it's a pretty momentous occasion for us at Macro and Cheese. But regardless of that, when you see that this 900 billion keeps coming up, right? When did we see that the first time? Well, that was in 2008, 2009 during the great financial crisis. And it was asked of Congress, why is this number 900 billion? And the answer most commonly said was because it's not a trillion, right? That
So
and
it's like
that's
something on
very
sale
true.
for $9.99.
Exactly. It's the whole thing about a trillion. Saying a trillion is too much, right? It's the exact same number. It's a fallback position that your neoliberal politicians are not going to go up to that level. They can't, because they're still trying to convince people that your federal spending is restricted by tax revenue, right? That the whole neoliberal mantra of federal spending has to try to be maintained at all costs, right? Although we, basically made $1 trillion a day for 30 straight days to the market in March and April to keep it liquid, while we were all trying to figure out who was going to be affected by COVID towards the beginning of the year, right? That we basically blown out the entire pay for austerity model. And that's thanks to the COVID pandemic, right? But these are still the neoliberal economic mantra that is still trying to be by the edge of their fingernails maintained by not saying $1 trillion. And then when you break that down, all of this stuff that they must give to their donors, right? The corporations and everybody that keeps them afloat, when you add all of those things up to stay under that 900 billion mark, what's left over for the people? $600 a month, right? That's basically what it is. We're going to figure out the money that we normally give to the people that always get something, and whatever's left over, we'll see what we can do, right? So what's happening in the White House? Donald Trump is pissed, right? Because he hates to lose. So he's lost the election. He realized that he's still trying to, voter fraud, blah, 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 right? But now despite the Democrats, he's now going to say, no, we're going to do much more, right? Now the ball is in Nancy's court, right? Because Nancy's now going to have to do damage control, because Trump, the evil Dr. Trump, who we had to demonize so that Sleepy Joe could win, now I have to say, oh, well, that was the whole idea to begin with, that we wanted to increase that, but we were just waiting for the White House to tell us the amount, right? So this is all coming around. But although you're going to feel dirty because this was initiated by Trump, at least you're going to get something that's better than $600, right? At this point, Americans have to say, all right, I feel dirty about this because it's Trump, but it's here, take it. It's going to be a long winter.
Okay. So you in your Canadian optimism are adorable, and I appreciate all of it. You think we're actually going to get that $2,000. Here's where I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
All right.
So
you go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, of course, we had Trump come out with his, which, by the way, Melania did a lovely job on the Christmas decorations, the holiday that she hates. Props. He looked great.
It wasn't her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So you have Pelosi come out immediately and deflect the blame. And I don't believe that she's wrong. I think that this entire time they were going back and forth, the GOP and the DNC, because of the election. Had there not been an election, we probably would have seen some craptacular bills sooner. But they're both sides are culpable in this regard, because they were using it as leverage. Like you said, we got to get the evil Dr. Trump out, and the other ones were saying, deficit, whatever. So I do believe that they were behind the scenes just mucking about. But here's where I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't add up. Because you had the Sanders Hawley bill going around, and they were trying to generate support for a $1,200 COVID payment. And they pulled that out of the original bill in order to make sure that that survived. So here you had all the news stories about the greatest political odd couple and, just bullshit. So what was interesting to me is Hawley was the guy from Missouri who unseated Claire McCaskill. Claire, who is a Democrat, lost her seat to a full-on Republican. She was a Republican light. I don't even know what I call her, Republican light, but she lost her seat to a full-on Republican. The same guy who's been on TV for the last 3 weeks saying that, well, I don't know that we can really congratulate Joe Biden just yet. And we've got to let Trump, take all full means and what. So that's his perspective. He is still hedging his bet that maybe Trump will pull something out with the Electoral College or whatever it was he was thinking. Would not say it. But he's the one who's forwarding this $1,200. And then Trump behind the scenes he was going on Fox News saying, well, I wanted it to be much more. And I'm like, well, that's easy to say. What were you doing? And then these news stories came out about aides who were trying to talk Trump out of it. I'm like, okay, this sets up a John Grisham novel, right? Because if I forward a story to a journalist and they pick it up that Trump was trying to be the champion of the people and he was held back by his own aides, and it was such a crime. And here he is now in the 11th hour talking about how he's going to hold the line here for us. I'm not buying any of it. And the reason I'm not is why were Hawley and Sanders behind the scenes trying to scrape together $1,200 if Hawley knew this was coming from Trump? I'm not buying it. I think that Trump will get the pressure that from Congress on both sides, and he'll sign the shit show. And he'll say, no, he's not going to come out and say they forced me to sign it, but he's like, you know what? I wanted to get you guys something, and let's blame it all on Pelosi. And I will continue to my last breath to get you, because that plays so much better. That's a better narrative. There's more drama to it than if he's able to stop this and rewrite it. Because you had Ilhan Omar and Pramila Jayapal, their response was, we have those one pager right here. It's ready to go. Sign it. And nobody rushed that off to the White House, right? No, nobody sent him a fax. So I really feel like I want to believe you, Andy. I want to believe you're right. And so then we have the question of means testing. Because in this original bill, that $600 was only for people who made less than $75,000. So married couples, I didn't see what the number was, if they joined married couples and had a different threshold for that, or if it was just going to be a flat $75,000 for each person and they were on their own income. I didn't see the text. So in Trump's 2000, is that also means tested? And if it is means tested, then it's a much, much smaller portion of the American population that will get that money regardless, whether it's 600 or 2000 or 1200. Anytime you have means testing on it, it is largely performative, and it doesn't really help everybody. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, you know what?
I don't know.
I was just floating that from the virtual Christmas snow globe, right? So,
and we appreciate it. We appreciate your positivity. So, real quick,
there's got to be something good come out of 2020. There has to be.
That it ends. That's what comes out. That it ends. But
Yes.
Dave weighed in this morning. He's watching us on YouTube. Morning, Dave. He said, once we figured out that Wall Street was going to be okay, they then told Main Street to fuck off. And that is absolutely true. And then he goes on with, the fact is that Dems failed to stand up and message to the people. They could have jammed up all the senators for re-election, and they didn't. Good point. But Dave, you're just a political novice. What do you know? So thank you, Dave, for that. So yeah, we're all political novices when it's convenient.
Sure. Yeah.
So my favorite Twitter meme on this one, and this one had me cracking up. So I'm going to try and post this link. I think I may have already done. This was from Unsatiated Blood on Twitter, and I really kind of like that username, but he posted this. I don't know if it's a he, she, or what their pronouns are, but posted this. And what game show is this from, Andy? You were telling me.
Deal or No
Let's
Deal.
Make a Deal.
No, Deal or No Deal with Howie Mandel.
Oh God, not that guy. Okay, so for those of you who are just listening and going about your day, what it is this is in response to Nancy Pelosi's rebuttal of Donald Trump about the $2,000, and the heading is Congress was like, and it's a picture of Deal or No Deal with this really pretty lady so super excited about $5. And it just cracks me up because, yeah, that's pretty accurate. This is what they think of us. So even Andy, I don't know if you want to talk about what you guys did in Canada, but I feel like even 2000 is kind of like insulting. And it's not that I want to be an ungrateful pleb, a peasant, ungrateful for the $2,000. But I'm like, no, these are just crumbs during an unprecedented time with unemployment and healthcare and a global pandemic and everything that's going on. Is just $2,000 is just hush money.
Well, that's the
really
thing,
is.
right? In most every other country in the world, at least, most of the G20 countries in the world, what the governments did was they said, all right, well, we're going to create a stimulus package for the people, or an emergency package, or whatever you want to call it. And they did a reoccurring monthly amount, right? Like since April, right? That everybody's going to get this much money per month. Right. And as it got down the line, and we realized that for a lot of these countries, with the exception of Australia, New Zealand, and some of the Asian countries that actually did it right, what they said when it got to the summer and the fall, okay, well, we're just going to have to extend these programs. So they've all been extended until this dies down, until the vaccine rolls out and they maybe have an opportunity to get ahead of this. But all of those, when you add that up, this has been going on since March. Those payments are monthly. So, $2,000 a month per Canadian for the entire time if you're out of work, right? So the U.S. are going to be in March an entire year. A lot of Americans without any income at all, and most of these payments that you've had a moratorium on are all going to come due, right? That's a recipe for an economic catastrophe, let alone recession or depression, right? Like,
well, we did get an extension, so it's not December 30th that the moratorium ends. It's now January. So we got an extra 30 days. But as we saw in New York and in other parts of the country, they're still evicting people. So I'm not sure what this moratorium means. And in New York, there were people being arrested trying to save a family who was being evicted in the middle of winter in a pandemic. That makes no sense, right? So
Sure.
this is, yeah, America. I don't know how else to describe it, but that I think that I got to go back to the silver lining in 2020 is that the veil has been removed from all of these things, right? We had somebody in who was an incompetent dictator who allowed all of us to see what was going on and nobody came away unscathed. So for those people who are saying don't rock the boat with Pelosi and we need Pelosi and how dare you challenge AOC, have you not been paying attention? We all see what is going on now, all of it. And there's for you to still be defending the status quo at this point means either you have been under a rock or you're in full on denial. And neither one of those is acceptable with the problems that we have in front of us today. So I need you to, take a seat and get your shit together, all of it, and stop interfering with the rest of us who have been awake and adulting this entire time. And that is really the politest way that I can say this.
Mm.
So let's talk about something happier, Andy, just for a second.
Well,
Macaroni
hang on a
cheese.
second. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Okay. That's what I was going to bring up.
Macaroni and cheese. Yeah. See, I know.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah. So anyways, if you've not seen us before, I'm the producer of the podcast Macro and Cheese, and we are coming up on. We're getting closer to the end of our second year, which means that this Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, we are dropping our 100th episode. So very excited about that. We've been able to somehow do an episode a week for 100 weeks. And
Wait, no. You were so modest. Not somehow. That was you. Because I want to stress to people who don't understand what post-production looks like and how long it takes. So I go through hours of thinking that I've got a piece absolutely edited perfectly. And then I hand it off to Andy, who is our executive media guru, and he tears it to shreds with all the stuff that I missed. So it takes a long time. And when you're dealing with just audio on a podcast, it's got to be crisp and clean and perfect. And I know that Andy goes into the sound wave files to a finite level, and that's how he edits. He's not editing necessarily by what he listens to. He goes to a deeper level. So number one, for a podcast to be issued every week on time, especially at the level and content and duration that Macaroni and Cheese is phenomenal in and of itself. But to do it for 100 weeks is unheard of. And give yourself some serious credit here. And I'm not going to say that other people aren't involved in doing their part too, but it's so easy to jump on a call and just do a straight record for an hour or two. You're just having a conversation, then you're done, you go about your day. It's the work that happens behind the scenes. And Andy, that is all you. And so for those who don't know how fortunate we are here at DLF, we have one of the best audio guys in the entire world working on our team. And I don't say that lightly. So Andy, I know you're not going to say it, so I got to say it. Congratulations. You earned it. This is wonderful. It's absolutely unheard of. And you should have a big ass trophy sitting on your desk for it.
or at least a participation award.
Right, a little blue ribbon, something, but it's phenomenal. And I do love the content. And I will say this, that if you don't have the time or the money to spend getting an economics degree or sitting through a college course on macro, this will do the job for you. Just pick a couple of them, and they're really nicely laid out, and that's due to Virginia. You know exactly what you're going to hear and what it's about and the content. You can click on it and just let it play while you're going about your business. You will learn so much about how things actually work, not the propaganda piece, not this great lie of austerity and how are we going to pay for it, and the federal economics is just like your household budget. All of that is bullshit. It's not true. And you will learn it listening to some of the greatest economic minds in the entire world on this little podcast. So I'm sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but
No, no,
you
no, no,
just
no.
you were
Of course not.
modest.
And that I wanted to say thank you for those kind words. You know, the reason I do this is because obviously I must love to, or I wouldn't. But it's something that I discovered in me, um, because quite honestly, I don't really have much of a history of doing this stuff. I was an industrial electrician for 30 years, and I retired in 2017 with the idea of taking my pension and going out and, starting a job as just a private electrician, doing jobs here and there. Um, but then at the beginning of 2019, I discovered that I had a knack for doing this kind of thing. So I'm self-taught. I figured it all out on my own, and I guess I've gotten pretty good at it, but over the last couple of years. But it's a labor of love for me, right? I absolutely love doing it. The audio editing and the video production and the graphics design. It's kind of opened up a world to me that I never even knew that I was going to even be good at, right? So that's a really positive thing in my mind, and it's given me the opportunity, to virtually work, for as long as I want, and not be restricted to, being an old guy going to go out and wire somebody's home, you know, in a construction environment, right? It's something that I could do, conceivably well into my 70s if I chose to do it, even as a hobby. So it was really, a nice thing to discover. And as long as I can, provide an income for myself, which I'm hoping to get to at some point, in the future, then that's positive as well. But I just wanted to talk briefly about this week's podcast. Our 100th is with the international president of the Flight Attendants Union, uh, Sarah Nelson, which is a feather in our cap because of how she's been spotlighted in all of this that's happened with negotiations for stimulus, and her friendship with Stephanie Kelton, and her work behind the scenes with the Biden administration and all this stuff. And just a wonderful person, and just an advocate for workers in general, let alone the unions she represents, or other unions in the country. But why this is relevant to what we're talking about right now is because of the process that they were involved in back in March and April when the first stimulus came out, and how they approached it and were able to do so much more than anybody else. And it was ingenious, really. And I don't want to talk too much about it because obviously the podcast hasn't dropped yet. Not, so I don't want to be the spoiler guy. And obviously, that with that, but what we were talking about uh, is how their approach to stimulus to protect their workers was to approach, the airlines that were, typical corporations trying to maximize profit and minimize payments to workers and cutting back on stuff. And they basically said, the only way you're going to keep the airlines afloat in this is if you approach it through the workers, right? You say, okay, look, we want to uh, keep our members whole without having them lose their jobs and lose their benefits, right? So if you want an an extra addendum to the stimulus package for the airlines, you've got to do it through us, because quite honestly, the people don't care about the airlines because they've been squeezing people into those seats, right? And all the extra costs and how expensive it is to fly for years. And they were absolutely successful, right? That first stimulus package, every single uh, person in that union didn't work through all of that time, right up to September 31st when it expired, with full pay and full benefits. How many industries can say that in the United States, right? And that's the power of a strong union, right? And that's why any movement forward on the progressive side needs to include the strength of unions, because they're the only advocate for the worker. And that's
Oh,
why it's so important.
As you were talking about this particular example, and I'm definitely going to go out and listen to it, I was thinking of the article that came out from ProPublica about Waterloo, Iowa, and the Tyson plant there and how it was handled. So those Tyson workers don't have a union. Tyson is the food producer, and what they outlined was Tyson was taking advantage of immigrants who had come to this country either because of political or other things. So these were Somali and other people from all over the world who were in Tyson or in Waterloo, Iowa, working at the Tyson plant. And the difference, as you were speaking, when I was listening to the advocacy of the airline union for their workers, in the Tyson plant, as outlined in this article, you had management taking bets on who was going to die in their plant from COVID. You had over half of the 2,000 workers come down sick. You had a number of people die. You had people, they talk about people actually getting sick and vomiting on the line. And the workers are real close to each other, and management was just like, keep working. And so you had Iowa, in this little town in Iowa, Waterloo, Iowa, being overrun in their hospitals, people like falling out on the pavement, families coming in. They had this one doctor who said, here I see this man come in and next is his son. And I'm like, I'm willing to bet, oh, yep, here's the ER report for his wife. So it was decimating entire families, this entire community. And it was all because of management's perspective on this pandemic and the value that they put on the lives of their workers, which was zero. So what an interesting contrast in a cerebral standpoint. From a humanitarian standpoint, this tells you why Republicans are trying so hard to get the protections for businesses so that you can't sue them over COVID. And Tyson is just one example. We have so many where people either thought it was a hoax or thought it was a joke, or they just don't care. And you and your family really don't amount to much for them. So this is why you can see in the stimulus bill, they were pushing so hard for their own corporate donors to have protections, while you yourself should not. And again, Andy, you're right. This is where union protections, and what is the power of the union if not people standing together saying this is not okay. I might be okay, but the person standing next to me isn't, and I'm not okay with that. That is the whole idea behind a union. Solidarity,
right.
standing together.
Right. And she did, and Sarah also said there aren't, strikes or illegal strikes. There are strikes and unsuccessful strikes, right? If you want to look at what happened with the teachers just recently, right? When the teachers actually banded together and they walked off and they virtually basically got what they wanted, right? There a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
right? Those were quote unquote illegal strikes, right? A lot of them in right to work states, right? That that is, it's so important for people to understand that that is where you get your power. We're talking about, a lot of people are talking about, organizing a general strike. Well, why is that not been possible till now? Because the people are divided, right? The people do not they do not understand that it would take, if you took the major unions, if they still had their power, right, to all band together and say, look, no, we're done. 2 days of it, right, would shut capital down. You could virtually demand what you wanted, right? But all of the vilifying of unions over the last decade or two, right? There
Mhm.
are there are currently in the private sector 6% of employees are unionized, and in the public sector 12%. Right.
Well, I think it also goes back to leadership, right? So you have an example of leadership who is actually putting their people first. I remember when the whole thing with the post offices started to come down, and the post offices were being gutted and their equipment taken down. I called my labor board in Gurnee, Illinois. Hi, Patrick. I called him, the president, and he hung up on me. And my question to him was, "Hey, the post office is part of our group that we organize for. I'm with CWA, but these are our union brothers and sisters in the post office. Shouldn't we be issuing a statement in solidarity that we stand with our postal workers, our brothers and sisters?" Patrick thought that was absolutely ridiculous and a waste of his time. And how dare I even present such a thing that I should be going back to CWA or my local? And I'm like, Patrick, you're my closest local. You are my closest local in Gurnee, Illinois. And he hung up on me. So this, I think, goes back to leadership. So we saw Trumka come out with some crazy ideas, and he's all in for Biden. So I think that some of these union leaders, they themselves are kind of in a bubble, and they're still going with, well, Biden's coming back in, so the status quo is coming back. We'll totally be okay. Not realizing that we will never be okay. We can never go back to what was before, for so many reasons, not just logistically. It's never going to happen. And oh, by the way, now our countdown is at 8 years for doing something about CO2 emissions. So we cannot afford to wait. We cannot afford to not be unified. And if we cannot organize under our leadership, whether it's union or Congress or whatever, we absolutely have to be organizing together. And so this goes back to the original point of the gentleman I had an exchange with this morning, and I am going to follow up with him. I don't give a shit about AOC. I never have. I appreciate her opinions, but she's one person, and she chose to take the job that was a representative for the people. She is not better than me. She's not worse than me. She doesn't have more value, and her life does not matter more than me or anyone else. So for you to disrupt and divide what we are trying to do because you have put her on a pedestal, or we put any kind of politician, whether it's Pelosi or Trump, on a pedestal, you are in the wrong place. Take the example of the union leader who decided that not me, us, the people matter. This is how you maintain an organization. This is how you maintain profitability. This is how you maintain lives and health. There's no way around it. There's no other way to do it. And when you start dividing people or admonishing people for speaking up, standing out in the only way that they have left, the problem is you, right? So I guess that's a long way of saying go listen to the podcast. And yeah.
Oh yes,
So
absolutely. So I just before we shut down here for the day, and one of us goes on holidays. I just wanted to a quick story. In Canada, our 150th anniversary as a country was in 2017, right? So it was a big year for Canada with lots of things planned, lots of celebrations, lots of stuff from the government and parties and stuff like that. One of the things that came out of that, I believe that was the year that there was basically a poll that was nationwide. And part of that celebration was asking who is the greatest Canadian of all time, right? And I know that Americans don't know a lot about Canada in general, which is fair. I get that. Canada's a much smaller country. But you at least know a few famous Canadians, right? If you're a hockey fan, you know the name Wayne Gretzky, right? Or Bobby Orr, both very great Canadians, right? Famous actors that are Canadian, you know lots of singers that are Canadian. So there's no shortage of Canadians out there that people would know internationally, right? And who we would know. And when it came down to it, the person that won was a fellow by the name of Tommy Douglas. Tommy Douglas was a Canadian politician. He was a socialist. And he was so loved. The reason was because he was the father of our healthcare, basically, right? He was pro-union. He was, instituted a lot of socialist programs in Canada that we now have. And so isn't that telling? An entire country with all of the celebrities and famous people and what made them great, that this was the one Canadian that stood out above all of them. And I think that says a lot about Canada and about how Canada and the US are different in some ways, right? Because I don't think that you would ever hear something like that come out of the US because of how you pedestalize celebrities, right? I just think was a really interesting anecdote from Canada, that from that year, that was the most popular Canadian of all time, most famous Canadian.
Absolutely. Especially because you guys have diversity in political ideology in Canada too. It's not like everybody's happy-go-lucky, full-on tree hugger liberal. No, you guys have conservatives. I mean, real conservatives, not whatever this is we have here. But and you guys have alt-right and things like that too. So for that to be the chosen person, it just says so much. And I think because now the U.S. serves as a warning to the rest of the world, I would like to think that maybe we helped with that too. Everybody looks southward and goes, no, let's not do that.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest American exports is neoliberalism, right? But
freedom. We call it freedom.
It always seems that in other countries, it was always seemed that cooler heads prevailed, right? In the other countries, that they were never as neoliberalistic as the United States, right? It was George Carlin. Sure. But George Carlin said that, when you're born into this world, you get a ticket to the freak show, and when you're born in the U.S., you get a front row seat, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Woo, America. Okay, so Dave wanted to remind you about the band Rush. rush.
Oh, he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. You know, our Rush made great music. Your Rush is just a freaking asshole talk show host. So who's got the better one?
Yeah, well, there's that. So, all right. Well, with that, I need to get back to work. So, Andy, you have a wonderful holiday. And we'll meet back here Monday.
Absolutely. We'll start rolling out our platform for saying goodbye to 2020, and
oh Lord,
hopefully a lot of the issues that seem to hound us and make 2020.
What we should do is a therapeutic. We'll bring Rome back, and we'll do like a full-on platform blunt talk for 24 hours.
We'll call it. Yeah, exactly. We'll call it the purge. We'll call it the 2020 purge.
Yeah, exactly. Get just whatever your issue was, write it down, flame it up. Let's do it.
We are offering virtual coffee enemas to anybody that wants one.
Exactly. So thank you everybody for weighing in, for Dave, for Mike, for getting up early. Okay, Mike, you're not on vacation. You're still working, which is why you're up with us. So thank you. Solidarity, brother. And everybody try to have, if Christmas is your holiday, hey, have a good time. If you cannot be with the people that you love, please let them know that you love them. Reach out. Even if it's, if all that you can muster is a text message, go full on emoji with that text message, or pick up the phone and actually have a conversation. So to my son, who this is the first Christmas, and I'm already getting emotional, 26 years. I have never been away from him for Christmas. So yeah, Merry Christmas. And that's it from me.
Yeah, I hear you. This is the first Christmas that's going to go past that I don't get to see my mom. But you know what? It's the spirit fills me, and I will keep her in my heart until I get the chance to go back to go see her. You know, we'll get through it. We got through most of this year, just a little bit more to go. So, anyways.
Exactly. So, all right. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Yes, absolutely, Kerri. And please stay safe this holiday. Please wear a mask and social distance and hand sanitizer, all of the good stuff. And please don't travel. We've got to stay safe. We got to get a chance to get to 2021 so we can put all this behind us. So I just wanted to say happy holidays to everyone. Happy Festivus, whatever you celebrate, and we'll see you after Christmas. Take care, everybody.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keeping it G. Whoa.